Woody Wommack and Mike Farrell here for another episode of our weekly wrap-up show, talking about all the action in Week 3. Mike, let's jump right into the topics. Miami, they just got hammered by Michigan State, and the Canes fans are done. And it's the typical Miami life cycle here. The former players come out and say he's terrible. They're going on the radio. They want him done, and that's usually the beginning of the end, right?
Yeah, and yet they continue to make hire after hire that doesn't make sense. And, obviously, I don't think they have legs to get a Mario Cristobal. Everybody, Farrell, Alabama anyways, so he wouldn't be here for long. But I don't know what the solution is there, but they're really awful. And Michigan State's for real. I said Michigan State wasn't going to make a bowl game. I was so wrong. Mel has them playing power football. Quarterback's good. He's better than D'Eriq King. Kenneth Walker's best running back on the field by far. And, the only guy that came to play was Charleston Rambo, and he's not even a Miami recruit. He's a transfer. So it's ugly there. And yeah, it's the same thing. It's rinse and repeat, man. I mean, his record's worse than Al Golden's was. You pointed that out to me. And I don't know what they could do.
Well, I've noticed, also he's getting into Butch Jones territory with, I think he said, we whipped their D-line or something, or our D-line whipped their O-line. It's like, you didn't whip anything. You lost by 20. I mean, I know it was close in the fourth quarter, but
yeah, but they wore down. Right. I mean, they got destroyed in the fourth quarter,
Right. So
and D'Eriq King has signed 80, but he's not good.
Okay. Well, I think it's pretty clear he came back too soon from that ACL injury. I mean, he was limping around out there, and he just doesn't look the same.
I have a name, image, likeness theory on quarterbacks. I really do.
Let's hear it.
Well, listen, there's a couple doing amazing, right? Corral, lighten up the world. But some of the big name quarterbacks that have come into this season, looking to impress, have other things on their minds. And the only thing I can think of is name, image, likeness and making money. I mean, CJ Stroud talks about what a $1 million player he is and how great he is and all this other stuff. Well, you're not. Sam Howell looked horrible in the first game. He's gotten better since then. But Spencer Rattler looks average. D'Eriq King looks bad. There's got to be something going on where the focus isn't there. It's a theory. It's a theory I'm throwing out.
Great theory. So why? Because what they are tweeting out a picture with a car or something?
Nah, they're doing different stuff. They're doing a lot of additional things that they never would have done before. I mean, get in the film room, study your opponent, stop pimping cars, signing autographs. I mean, it's theory. 3 games.
We need to have a Mike Farrell get off my lawn segment for sure, because this is an incredible take that you had.
Oh, it's in my 3-point stance tomorrow on Tuesday too. So I don't mind them making. I'm just saying there's something off. Michael Penix stinks. I just can name quarterback after quarterback who don't look good.
Well, right.
And I know injuries. Yeah, something else is going on.
What NIL deal is Michael Penix doing that is distracting him from watching film?
I'm sure he's got some. Check out his social media. I'm sure he's got something.
Okay.
Even if it's selling his own shirt or something. I'm just saying there's less than a focus than there was before. So laugh all you want, but you'll see. Kids are trying to impress. They're trying to impress the people that are paying now instead of trying to impress the NFL, who could pay them a whole lot more.
All right. Well, that's quite a theory. So,
name another good quarterback. Name another quarterback.
Bryce Young. Really well. Bryce Young has the most NIL deals.
There you go. Not the most. I mean, I do think D'Eriq quarterback's doing right. Matt Corral shown they're 1-2 on my Heisman list. After that, it's disappointment after disappointment.
Well, right, but Bryce Young's making the most money off of his thing. He had an NFT come out right before the first game.
focused.
So,
The others aren't.
okay. So even though he's making the most money, he remains focused. He's not
You
distracted.
laugh at like Einstein and some of his theories.
I probably would have. Yeah, I would have gladly mocked Einstein.
Yes.
What a theory. All right. Moving on. I guess Manny's not. We really didn't talk about Manny Diaz. You went straight into other topics.
I did. Well, listen, he's a dead man walking. He's not going to last. He's starting to talk about giving the players an opportunity to play and all that stuff. What he really needs to do is he needs to win out. That's not going to happen, or at least the 6 of 7 or whatever they got left. I mean, they're 1-2. He's got to get to 8 wins if he wants to keep his job, and that's not going to happen the way this Miami team looks.
Penn State, they get a big win. They don't move into the top 5. They beat Auburn at home. A big win. They've got 2 of the best wins of the season, in my opinion, beating Auburn and beating Wisconsin. Are they not getting enough respect?
Probably not. I mean, and we've seen this before, but it's rude to argue against the other programs that are in the top 5 as well. So, they do have 2 good ones. It doesn't look as good as we expected them to. And Auburn is good, but I think you'll see Auburn will probably have a few interesting losses down there because the running game's great. Quarterback play not there, but I would put them probably ahead of Oklahoma, and then debate whether who's the better team, Iowa or Penn State from the Big Ten.
Right. Why is Oklahoma like, God's gift to the top 5? I mean, I understand they were ranked high to start the season, but Penn State has played 2 real games.
Right.
And won in relatively impressive fashion. I just don't get, like, why don't people just say, hey, we're going to put Penn State in the top 5 based on who they played?
I don't know. I mean, Oklahoma's beaten Tulane, Western Carolina, Nebraska, and barely beat Nebraska. They struggle with Tulane. They're not showing anything that tells me that they're going to be the potential national championship team I thought they would be, or playoff team. I don't think strength of schedule or who you play seems to matter, at least until you get to closer to the polls that mean something. But Penn State moving up now would certainly help them in a few weeks when that time comes. So I don't get it. Alabama and Georgia won 2. I don't have a problem with Oregon, but I don't see Oklahoma impressing me at all. And I wouldn't even put them. I mean, I wouldn't put them ahead of Cincinnati. I would have Cincinnati ahead of them. And I know you hate Cincinnati or don't think they're real, but at least they've been dominant in their games and destroyed crappy competition and beat an Indiana team that's better than anybody Oklahoma's played.
Yeah. So getting back to Penn State, I do think, unfortunately for them, I think the Auburn win is not going to look as good when the season's over because, Auburn's got a murderer's row of opponents left. I mean, the SEC West is just, stacked beyond belief this year. So they're probably going to lose 3, maybe 4 more games. Or so you're looking at a team that finishes 7-5 and you're like, oh, who cares? Big deal, Penn State. But I don't know. I thought it was a good win. I do think right now, I think would you put them ahead of Ohio State and Iowa as the favorite to win the Big Ten?
Yeah. Ohio State obviously still has a defense that doesn't convince me of anything. Doesn't have an offense. There's more balance at Penn State. Sean Clifford isn't the greatest quarterback in the world, but he's a leader. They've got a pretty good offensive line. They run the ball well. They've got 2 excellent receivers in Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington, and the defense is playing a lot better than expected. Losing 2 key pass rushers, and they've just sort of plugged guys in there. The linebackers are running around and making plays, and you got Brisker in the secondary. So I think Penn State's probably right now the most complete team, not the most talented roster. I think that still is Ohio State, but based on what I'm seeing, and listen, the USC would be so lucky to have James Franklin. Penn State fans sometimes take him for granted a bit. He got robbed of going to the playoff one year. He's the hire. he would not fail at USC, and he would absolutely destroy. So he's going to get yet another raise because I don't think he's going to go. I think Fickell's going to get that USC job. But Penn State fans really have to start appreciating that guy. And I saw the SEC fans making fun of, all the bad calls with the refs and all that stuff. But you got to remember, Penn State also had one series where they had 3 downs. I mean, that doesn't happen. So it was on both sides, and Penn State won that game because Mike Bobo decided to throw a slot fade and didn't have Calvin Johnson on his roster.
Yeah, that 3 down thing is like, what is it, 1980? How was that not? How could they not fix that upon review?
That's unbelievable. Unbelievable that happened.
All right, speaking of struggles, DJ Uiagalelei and Clemson survive. It came down to the end against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech had the ball on the goal line, couldn't punch it in. They went with a shovel pass, which I saw some of their fans said, hey, it was a good call. I've never seen him run that. The problem was that the guy they had pulling that needed to make the key block finished the day as their lowest graded player on Pro Football Focus. So I think that might have been – plus you're trying to throw the ball to like one of your 2 tight ends or whatever. Just – I don't know. I say you got Jahmyr Gibbs on your team. Try to find a way to get him the ball. But anyway, DJ's really struggling. I mean, he was outplayed in this game by Jordan Yates. He doesn't look confident. He looks tentative. He doesn't seem like he wants to throw the ball down the field. What do you make of what we've seen from him so far? Because he doesn't want to run either, and he doesn't look very fast, despite someone on this podcast telling me he was like Cam Newton. So what do you think?
We saw him run in high school. He can run. He's not going to run away from people, but he's a big guy and hard to tackle. Like if you remember early in Ben Roethlisberger's career, he would run.
You can see me run you can see me run every day at the gym too, and I'm a big guy who's hard to bring down. No one's comparing me to Cam Newton.
Well, he's got a little bit more speed and explosion than you do, I believe. But a lot of people are blaming the offensive line. A lot of people are blaming the play calling. A lot of people are blaming the quarterback. I don't know what the issue is here, but it's really not what we expect from Clemson at all. It's embarrassing at this point, and they're a team. I mean, Georgia Tech is not a good football team. And, I agree with you on the shovel pass. It's not a great call. You got Jordan Yates, get him out in space. Just like the Bo Nix call at Penn State. You got a quarterback who can actually move a little bit, get him out in space, give him some options. And both of those were there was no option to either of those plays. But Clemson needs to have an urgency. Now, you're not going to get Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence to the next great one you're going to run into a guy who takes a year of development maybe, but based on what he looked last year in 2 games to where he looks like this season, everything is just so slow, and he's locking in and he's not decisive. He looks like a completely different quarterback, and I think they're afraid to let him loose because he's going to make mistakes. So it's ugly. I don't think you make the quarterback change right now, but this defense is going to start to get a little bit upset, because they're really good defense, and they're carrying this team right now. And the passing game is awful. And maybe they were bailed out by all these great players that we're used to seeing at Clemson, and maybe they don't have those guys. Justin Ross doesn't look like the same player. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is there. I just know that they're not going to, go to the playoff. There's absolutely no way that's going to happen.
Well, it's okay to take a step back, like you said. I just think based on how DJ played last year, it's surprising to see how he just doesn't look the same. Just doesn't look like – it looks like he's thinking too much, and maybe he's just in a rut. Maybe he has a breakout game and it's fixed. I do think their offensive line is having some issues as well. I mean, because they're not exactly running the ball, super great either. I mean, they scored less points against Georgia Tech than Northern Illinois. So I do think they're in for 1 or 2 more losses, especially if things keep going like this.
You know what he's focused on, Woody Wommack?
What?
Name, image, likeness.
I know, yes. He has some other things going on in his life. I thought that's what you were going to say, but
No, I know. There's other, and again, I mean, a lot of people are worried about the focus and, why is he on social media talking about his old high school football team and his younger brother and all this other stuff. And listen, I don't know what's going on. No, how he is in the film room. I don't know how he is in the locker room. I just know that he looks like a completely different quarterback last year. And I'm not sure how that's going to translate. We got NC State and BC coming up, who are two fairly good football teams. And you could get tripped up. Offensive line. I mean, name the last offensive lineman that Clemson took that was good and they made great.
Right. Yeah. There's not a lot of, I mean, even the 5 stars they've had or fringe 5 stars they had come in just haven't, it's not like at Alabama where we're seeing a guy go to be a top 10 pick or a first rounder like Jedrick Wills or Alex Leatherwood or Evan Neal. We're seeing guys like Jackson Carman who are 3rd, 4th round picks.
Yeah.
Or even
and Mitch Hyatts of the world who just don't even get drafted.
Right. So that's something to think about. All right, Mike. Florida State continues to struggle. Mike Norvell, potential hot seat candidate. And I've got an off the wall topic for you. Do you think it's time for the powers that be at Florida State to start thinking about Deion Sanders as a real possibility as their head coach?
So that's the one you were hinting at, huh?
Yeah.
No. I mean, listen, I'm not saying Norvell's the answer. His record is embarrassing. The team, looked good in the first game. Now they're getting blown out by Wake Forest. I mean, I remember, I was flipping around and I looked at that score and I thought it was 35-34. And I'm like, oh, weird. They're losing to Wake Forest by 1 late. It was 35-14 and they stink. They're just awful. He's 3-9. He's 2-7 in the horrible ACC. He's not the solution. But I don't think Deion is either. I mean, Deion hasn't proven to me that he can be a Power 5 head football coach. His experience is at a, somewhat made up high school and now at Jackson State. So I just think jumping from that experience, even though you're arguably the greatest cornerback to ever live, to running a program. I mean, let's put Deion in charge of Florida State and Ed Reed in charge of Miami and see what happens.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
It can't be any worse.
No, they cannot do worse. I'll tell you this. Deion can go 3-9 and 2-7. Absolutely.
Right. I promise you he'd have a better recruiting class, at least the first 2 or 3 years. I kind of thought that Deion would be done at Jackson State by now. I thought it was going to be like a pet project and, he would lose interest, but they should have beat ULM this week. ULM, of course, one of the worst teams in the FBS. But the fact is they have probably 15 Power 5 players that he's brought to Jackson State, who have transferred out of other places or just not found a fit. Of course, he's got his 2 sons who both had legitimate offers and everything like that. I'm just saying, Mike, if Florida State finishes the year like 3-9 or whatever, you might have to fire Norvell, which I don't like to do after 2 years, but I also don't know if they can afford it. I don't know if the school can just keep, because they're paying Willie Taggart for 3 more years or something, $3 million a year. So it's really crazy that they're this bad. I just think Wake Forest was probably, I would say, one of their harder games in the ACC, but when you break down their schedule, I mean, they got Louisville this weekend, which there's a fishy line there. I mean, they probably got 2 they got UMass, that's a win, but NC State, Clemson, Florida, Miami, Boston College. So I mean, they better beat Louisville and they better beat Syracuse and UMass, and that gets you to 3.
And, let's not count, a victory over UMass. I mean, this team lost to Jacksonville State,
Yeah.
They could lose to anybody. So, and UMass is horrible. But, I mean, this Florida State team can clearly play down to anybody. it'll be interesting because UMass lost 45-28 to BC and 51-7 to Pitt, who are two middling ACC teams. But can you imagine like 20 years ago saying that Wake Forest was one of the harder games for Florida State? And I know Wake had that little run there under Grobe, but there's no way that these two teams should even be mentioned in the same sentence when it comes to the recruiting advantages and the tradition and the history and all that stuff. And to get blown out, it's just simply embarrassing. And I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe Deion and Ed Reed would be great at both of those programs and give them a chance because they can't do any worse. I just don't think that that's going to be the solution either.
Well, I'm saying like, okay, have him be lead the program, bring in an OC, bring in a DC, someone that, they're comfortable with. You never know.
You're going to bring in.
I don't know.
He's going to bring in his buddies.
Whoever Deion's comfortable with. If he's got, I'm talking like, when you hire a young coach and then you bring in, an elder statesman to be the sidekick or whatever, like a Ted Lasso situation.
Yeah, no, I get that. I just don't think that the proper hires would be made there. And I think recruiting would blow up. It'd be kind of interesting, but the on-field product would be equally as bad. But you're right. They can't get worse. So I guess my initial reaction to that was, no, he's not ready to take that step up. But I guess I could go 0-3, right?
You could lose to Jacksonville State. You could definitely
absolutely
coach the tackling that we saw in that last play.
I could absolutely lose to Jacksonville State.
And they're in the same position where the defensive coordinator's giving quotes today where he's like, oh, yeah, Wake Forest did they really gave us different looks than we saw on film. And it's like, just stop talking, if I'm Norvell, I'm just saying, look, Kenny Dillingham, no more, or whoever, no more. That's it. Like you're done talking for the year. We're shutting it down. I'll talk to the media.
There hasn't been. We're really early into the season, but it's been a season of really stupid excuses.
Right. Yes.
Like Scott Frost in the Illinois, 3-man look, really confused. Like, just everybody shut up. Say your team sucks. We're going to get back to the drawing board. Fire somebody to send a message. What do we call that? We call that a landmark fire, as John Taffer from Bar Rescue says. And send a message.
Well, it's like me when I play basketball. I foul someone as hard as possible 2 or 3 possessions into the game so they don't
send a message.
Come inside anymore to play.
Don't make me go into my prison stories. We're in the yard. You just go after the biggest guy. Take them out.
All right. Alabama, they got up big on Florida. Florida came back. The talk seems to be now that, the Alabama, the dynasty's over, etc. What do you think? I think they will lose a game during the regular season. And I personally think if they played Georgia, it would be a really fun game. And hopefully they play in the SC championship game. But what's your take right now? I personally think they will lose a game during the regular season.
All right. Takeaway on this is the Florida defense played a lot better than I expected them to. All the complaints about Ty Grantham last year were founded, and they were a disorganized bunch last year. This year, much better, playing as a team. You got guys stepping up like our buddy Gervon Dexter, Zach Evans. They're very talented up front. And despite some injuries, they've got a lot of playmakers that in that back seven. So here's the issue with Alabama. They're not going to lose to anybody. He tried the rat poison thing about Mercer. It didn't work. They obviously sort of fell a little bit flat at the Swamp, but that's still on the road over the number 11 team in the country. I believe they have 28 straight victories over SEC East opponents or something like that.
Yeah, they haven't lost since Steven Garcia beat them at South Carolina.
So they're not going to lose to the East. So Georgia, forget it. If they meet in the championship game, Bama's going to win. The games on here, Ole Miss is going to be interesting because Matt Corral is playing like the number 1 pick in the draft, and they will put up points. A&M I'm not sold on. Their defense is good, but their offense is meh. And then I don't think Arkansas or Auburn can hang with them, or LSU. So I still have them undefeated. But it was closer than I expected. Emory Jones played better. And if Anthony Richardson was playing, this could have been a different result. So it's scary. This is what Saban lives for. I mean, so whatever the line is against USM next week, take Alabama. And then in that Ole Miss game, I could just picture them blowing them out by 30. This is what Saban wants.
All right. Well, I'm marking it down. Alabama's going to lose a game.
Who are they losing to? Who you got?
Ole Miss. I'm going to say Ole Miss. Maybe.
All right.
Maybe.
Did you see the message board people wanting Saban fired?
I mean, I see that account that he tweets out ridiculous message board stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, I did see that.
We should not live in a country where there's somebody that's stupid owning a computer. Or
I have to think it's alcohol induced, a lot of those posts.
Yeah, I guess. Even though it's so funny. For every moron, there's someone dumber out there, and for people to say that, fire the whole staff and Saban can't make adjustments and all this other stuff. Man, you're spoiled. Try being a Florida State fan right now.
Real quick before we wrap up on that topic, it was rare to see Florida's offensive line kind of have their way. And I think Saban said after the game that, we need to play more players. Basically, we need to find more guys that we can play. I do think they kind of got worn out. It was so hot and humid down here in the South this weekend with those storms that were blowing through. I mean, I was at a game on Friday night, and it was like peak Florida summer humid. I don't know what was going on. I was drenched in sweat like by the first play of the game, and I was just wearing like shorts and a polo. They got worn out. I think they did play more guys, but I do think the way Florida's offensive line pushed them around, that's what leads me to believe that they'll probably drop a game.
We'll see. Well, Paul Fun's concerned. He's got his concern about Alabama, so that got him in.
Okay. Moving on. Heisman Watch. You mentioned it earlier, so let's hear your list. Who you got?
It's Matt Corral, and then it's Bryce Young. After that, I got to go Kenneth Walker. And the message you sent me over the weekend, so leading the nation in rushing. They're a very football team, surprising 3-0 football team. Running back's probably not going to win it, of course. Then I got Rattler. And then I got CJ Verdell, which doesn't, statistically not up there, but I think he's got one of the landmark performances in a big game this year. So that's going to keep him in the top 5 early. Eventually, another quarterback will surpass him. But those 5 I got right now.
Yeah, he only had 11 carries this week. So
yeah,
they played a
who'd they play? What
Stony
team?
Brook.
That's a with a lot of rocks in it. He's not going to get the stat to be in there, but that someone from Oregon should be in the top 5.
Did you see Cristobal tell the other coach that he was going to beat his ass during the game? Did you see that?
No, I missed that, but that doesn't surprise me at all.
So you'll have to search the Twitter clips out, but something happened to where I was like, I don't know if there was a cheap shot on one of Oregon's players. It was near the Stony Brook sideline. So Cristobal comes out to check on the guy. And next thing you know, Cristobal starts barking at this other coach. And he's doing it all the way as he goes back to his sideline. And he really, you got to use your lip reading skills. But I mean, he was pretty upset.
Was it the coach?
Yeah, I mean that's what I saw.
Okay, so he's roughly what, 5'5"?
Yeah, it's definitely like a Napoleon situation.
He's a very, very little man. So Mario, you played offensive line at a high level. You're a big dude. Come on, pick on somebody your own size. I love you to death, but Chuck Prior, looking at this right now, there's a football player standing next to him. It looks like he's 15 feet tall. Next to
there's there's a picture. Hold on, you could tell. Hold on, let me see if I can send it to you. There's a picture of Cristobal where he's just, I'm going to send it to you on your phone, where he's just talking to the guy. But after the game, they didn't shake hands after the game. And let's see, here's the quote from the coach. Certainly they're a quality program and he's a quality coach. Had nothing to do with the physicality of the game. It was honestly nothing more than me letting him know my attitude toward the sequence of events that happened. Honestly, it's over and done with. At the end of the game, there's way too much chaotic things going on, and we just didn't have the chance to shake hands. Yeah, right.
See, that picture you sent doesn't even show the difference in.
But
like,
you could
the over under on.
You could see Cristobal yelling at him.
I see that, but over under on Chuck Prior's height is 5'5", and I don't know which I would take if I was betting.
Do you know him or no?
I don't know him at all. He's been the head coach at Stony Brook since 2006.
Yeah,
and then he was the head coach at Trinity here in Connecticut. But he could punch me right in the knee, and I wouldn't know who he is.
I didn't know. I'm trying to find the video. I didn't know Stony Brook had a football team. I don't feel like they usually. I feel like they usually don't play. Like this isn't one of the punching bags that we see pop up. You know.
No, they're FCS, so it's not a big win. They've been in the playoffs 4 times in the FCS: 2011, 2012, 2017, 2018. So he's a good coach, done a good job there. But come on, Mario, let's go after someone a little bit bigger.
Maybe the guy said something
in a ring.
Right. You know? The guy said something to him that pissed him off, because then he shakes his head. I sent you the video. I found it.
I'll find out what it was.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could just ask him. But I sent you the video. So anyway, that was that doesn't have to do with the Heisman.
Well, anyway, CJ Verdell, number 5, but I couldn't run a great 5th candidate. So.
No, he's a good one. I was going to suggest him. I actually had his stats pulled up already because I was wondering if you were going to bring him up. All right. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Anything else you want to talk about?
Well, we talked a lot about such, right? Like teams that have really sucked.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk Georgia bouncing back. Even though JT Daniels been a little bit of a disappointment, they took it to South Carolina. Let's give some props to Iowa taking care of Kent State, and Texas A&M beating New Mexico. I thought they would have a little bit of trouble with them because of Terry Wilson, but there's some teams taking care of business out there that, I think could be good. I just don't see anybody really challenging Alabama at this point based on the way Oklahoma looks. And I don't think Georgia has the offensive guys to make it, a real threat there, but it's Alabama and everybody else. But let's say some positive things about people instead of Miami and Florida State suckage.
Well, I mean, got to go what moves the needle. I mean, I think
Ole Miss.
I think South Carolina is just really bad, and that's just how it's going to be. I mean, I think honestly, they're lucky that was the final score was even that little. I think it could have been much worse.
Well, I mean, gave them a lot of, and Ole Miss just rolled over them. How about Michigan? I know they're not passing the ball. I mean, Cade McNamara is averaging 10 passes a game, but they're just rolling over people too. So there's some positive things to take from this weekend. The problem is none of these teams are going to be able to hang with Alabama. They will go undefeated. They'll go to the playoff. They'll win the national championship again, and everybody will look back at this Florida loss as a moral victory for the Gators.
All right. Well, that wraps up this week's show. I'll be back later in the week with another show. Phil Steele says he's going to come on the show at some point. They send me a message saying, "What do you want to have Phil Steele on the podcast?" I say, "Yeah, sure, when?" And they say, "Oh, he's busy this week. How about next week?" I'm like, "You emailed me."
He'll do it. Phil Steele's a nice guy.
Right, but I'm just saying, don't email me to pitch a guest, and when I say yes, say he's busy. I'm like, you contacted me. I didn't reach out to you. So
who's the one guest you want? Who's the one you want more than anybody? Not a Saban, but like
I don't know. It's a good question.
Think about it. Let's make it happen. Let's make a wish.
I'll have to think about it. I mean, I the problem is having the time to record it. We have to record at night sometimes because of my schedule. So
you want Herbie? Herbie, who criticized the Mike Bobo play, and then on Twitter yelled at everybody who was a fan who criticized the Mike Bobo play. Do you want Herbie?
I wanted you to do one with Herb Street since he's promoting his book. I thought Uiagalelei would do that one.
I could. I'm lazy.
Where I'm aware. All right. Well, that's it for this week. That's it for me and Mike. I'll be back with a show later in the week. Thanks for hanging out, Mike.
All right. See you.